Hurricanes, large, lumbering, low-pressure systems. These storms devour coastal towns, devastate beaches, rip apart homes and livelihoods, and kill hundreds, if not thousands, of people.
These megastorms both frighten and fascinate those living along the East Coast and Gulf Shore. To protect them, there is a concentrated, coordinated effort to keep people safe.
In the next half hour, we'll dive into the many aspects of these tropical systems, including how they form, the dangers here at home, and what you can do to get prepared.
This is Safety in the Storm.
And now, a Pinpoint Weather special presentation. See how hurricanes form, the impact on our region from past storms, what should be in your severe weather kit, and the biggest weather threat we face in Southwest Virginia. Safety in the Storm, tracking the tropics on WFXR.
Hello, and thank you for joining us here on Safety in the Storm. I'm Chief Meteorologist John Carroll.
And I'm meteorologist Kara Thompson.
And I'm meteorologist Tab O'Neill. All it takes is one of these hurricanes to change your life forever.
Yeah, we've seen remnants of several of these storms reach Southwest Virginia, some like Hurricane Juan or Hurricane Michael, still having a lasting impression on everyone's lives and memories.
Forecasts and timings of these devastating storms have gotten more precise in the past several years, but you still need to be safe and informed.
Before we get into the how to get ready for a storm like this, we need to know the ingredients of how they form, and that includes what's happening in the Pacific Ocean.
The El Niño Southern Oscillation is a movement of equatorial Pacific Ocean water. During La Niña, strong trade winds push warm South American coastal waters across the Pacific, leaving cooler water to rise to the surface. This La Niña phase is powerful. Just last year alone, it pumped in massive amounts of rain into California, while we saw an active Atlantic hurricane season. And El Niño is the opposite. It is formed when trade winds weaken, become calm, or even reverse, allowing warm water to expand and deepen off the South American coast. This warm water heats the air above, and warm, moist air rises, affecting global wind. One of the things it contributes to is a southern jet stream forming that flows over the Caribbean and southern Atlantic. This jet creates vertical wind shear that stops storm development by, in a way, cutting the tops off of storms, preventing them from growing. This means El Niños result in fewer Atlantic hurricanes. At the same time, during an El Niño year, the eastern Pacific has little wind shear, allowing storms to grow vertically, become strong, and be numerous. Take a look at the La Niña and El Niño storms for the past 28 years. La Niña years produce significantly more. 273 storms compared to 88 in El Niño years, 141 hurricanes compared to 42, and 64 major hurricanes in La Niña years compared to just 19 in El Niño years.
As this year's El Niño forms, we'll likely see at or below the normal number of tropical storms for the 2023 season. But meteorologists have several things to keep in mind when they're watching the tropics. Hurricanes need 3 ingredients to develop. The first is warm sea surface temperatures at or above 80 degrees Fahrenheit. The warm waters will help to provide more moisture to fuel the storm. The second is a pre-existing weather disturbance. The third ingredient is light upper level winds or wind shear. This allows the storms to grow and not be sheared apart by strong winds. Now, the warm air over the ocean will rise upward, creating an area of low pressure underneath. This will cause more air to rush into the middle of the storm. The continuous process of the air rising and cooling will allow clouds and thunderstorms to form and grow. Now, once this area of storms begins to show some circular wind flow, it could be classified as a tropical depression. Now, tropical depressions usually produce maximum sustained winds below 39 miles per hour. Forecasters may upgrade a depression to a tropical storm when the storm circulation becomes more organized and maximum sustained winds reach 39 to 73 miles per hour. The tropical storm will become a hurricane when it produces sustained winds of 74 miles per hour or greater. Now, hurricanes are categorized using the Saffir-Simpson scale, which is based solely on a hurricane's maximum sustained winds. Now, once a hurricane reaches category 3, 4, or 5, it is classified as a major hurricane with maximum sustained winds above 111 miles per hour. Now, while the National Hurricane Center Center uses the Saffir-Simpson wind scale to classify hurricanes. It's important to know that these tropical systems can also produce other deadly hazards as storm surge, flooding, and tornadoes.
Now, we may not get many of the intense impacts from hurricanes here as opposed to what happens at the coast. But that doesn't mean Southwest Virginia can't experience the devastating effects of these storms. Western Virginia is blessed with the lovely Blue Ridge Mountains, a majestic range that dominates the skyline in the western third of the state from Tennessee to Maryland. But they are also a source of devastation and disaster. Often, an impactful flood will rage through the region, reminding us just how powerful storm water can be. A good number of these events are associated with tropical storms, or remnants of them. The director of the National Hurricane Center, Michael Brennan, who grew up here in Roanoke, is well aware of the issues associated with the remnants of tropical systems as they push through Western Virginia.
Western Virginia, with the Blue Ridge and the Appalachians there, is really a ground zero for flash flooding, heavy rainfall, mudslides, and then later on river flooding that's associated with tropical storms or their remnants as they move up, either from making landfall on the Atlantic coast, like a Florence, or along the Gulf Coast, where some of the heavier rain events have come from in Western Virginia's past. You think all the way back to Camille, 1969, Juan in 85, that was responsible for the Great Flood in Roanoke, and you can go back to Michael in 2018.
But not only do we have to deal with the tremendous amounts of rain associated with these systems, but occasionally there may be several days of rain before the actual tropical system comes across. Heavy rain on saturated soils is a recipe for disaster. Dr. Brennan remembers going through the floods associated with Juan, the main storm system behind the infamous flood of '85.
I remember the days of rain, not just from Juan, but from the frontal system that stalled out ahead of it. And that's something else that can sort of exacerbate the flooding if you're already in a wet period.
So the huge, large, lumbering cyclonic systems seen well out in the ocean may not look all that impressive by the time they get to Virginia, but the moisture is still there, and the mountains are the perfect squeegee to wring out any remaining water.
The rainfall threat is really not tied in any way to how strong the storm is, or even if the storm exists at all. Like with Juan, the remnants just sort of dissipated and got absorbed into a front, but all that moisture, combined with the front, it got that added lift from the front itself and then from the mountains, and that really just unleashed that tremendous rainfall.
So when you see the forecast path of a tropical cyclone heading into Virginia, make sure that you're prepared to deal with the flooding rain. In Western Virginia, arguably the most dangerous threat to life and property is flooding and flash flooding. The hills and the valleys work in concert with heavy rain to channel and funnel massive amounts of water to lower elevations and floodplains. If someone is swept away by the water, or is about to be, the swift water rescue teams jump in to help. Locally, the Swift Water Storm Team is an elite unit of the Salem Fire Department. It goes on high alert whenever there's potential for flooding rains in our area, but they have to be on the ready well before the rains begin.
So some of the first things we do is usually about 72 hours out from an event. We'll be in touch with the National Weather Service to see what the actual path of the storm is going to be and to see how we're going to be impacted by it and what the effects may be.
So that's how the process begins.
As things start ramping up and moving forward, if we know that the storm is going to directly affect our area, then we may end up calling in additional personnel to staff more boat teams. And then we send recon vehicles out during the event to keep constant watch on all our low-lying areas that are prone to flooding that we know have given us problems in the past.
It's an extremely dangerous job, and the Swiftwater Storm teams constantly patrol the area. So when trouble arises, they can get folks the help they need as fast as possible. Because if you're trapped or swept away by floodwaters, you don't have much time.
Water is probably the most powerful thing that you can run into, and water doesn't stop and it doesn't give up, and you are going to tire out long before the water does. So a water event is a lot more dangerous for our rescue personnel to be put into than even a fire event.
This is a 2-year rigorous training program that must be completed before the rescue team member is even considered to be a deployable asset.
These guys have to be able to swim through the worst of the worst conditions, and debris floating down through the water that may possibly hit you and injure you too. So it's definitely an intense program.
The Swiftwater Rescue Team is elite. They are proactive, not reactive. When the forecast calls for flooding rains, they are at the ready. When the rain is falling, they're out in the field, willing to risk their lives to save others. They staff up, they get ready, but they hope for the best.
The best flood event we can have is the one where we never have to leave the station.
Coming up next, we're going to be taking a look back at some recent remnants of tropical storms that have impacted us here at home and the lessons we learned from them.
But first, it's time for weather trivia. According to NOAA, when is the climatological peak of the Atlantic hurricane season? Is it A, June 1st, B, July 30th, C, August 25th, or D, September 10th? We'll have the answer when we come back. You're watching Safety in the Storm.
Welcome back. So, according to NOAA, when is the climatological peak of the Atlantic hurricane season? A, June 1st, B, July 30th, C, August 25th, or D, September 10th? The answer is D, September 10th.
The strongest storm to hit the United States during the 2022 hurricane season was Hurricane Ian. It made landfall in Florida as a Category 4 storm, tearing a path of destruction through the Sunshine State. Crews from here at home, including God's Pit Crew, were some of the first on the scene to help. The immediate disaster response coordinator says the work they do is a whole lot more than just fixing roofs and cutting trees.
Most of the folks are just they don't really know where to turn. They don't know what to think. We see that their homes are destroyed, but oftentimes their place of work is destroyed as well. So their home is destroyed, their way of life is destroyed. They really have no way of having a plan of what's next. So it's just complete frustration, emptiness, disbelief, all of those things. And that's really why we do what we do. We tarp roofs, we cut trees, but the main reason that we do that is to love on people. When a hurricane hits, there's a potential for hundreds of thousands of people to have an issue. When a tornado hits, even if it's a devastating tornado, there might be 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 people. But hurricanes are the big ones where we end up deploying for months at a time instead of a week or two. Thinking about the elderly folks where I pull up to their house and they've got 10 trees on their house, and local tree guys want $30,000 to do it, and I tell them the Lord paid for that and we're going to take care of that for free today. To think about the look on their face when we're pulling out of their driveway, that's what I think about when I'm heading home. It's just a warm feeling, nothing like it.
This year also marks the anniversaries of two storms that also impacted Southwest Virginia. Those were Hurricanes Michael and Florence.
5 years ago, the 2018 Atlantic hurricane season was bubbling with tropical activity. By the end of the season, 15 named storms had developed in the Atlantic basin. The most infamous, major hurricanes Florence and Michael. On September 11, 2018, Florence reached peak Category 4 intensity over the Atlantic Ocean. By the time the storm made landfall near Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina, Florence was a Category 1 hurricane. The storm continued inland into the Carolinas, Virginia, and West Virginia, where it weakened into a tropical low. Rain was the main issue in southwest and central Virginia. Between September 15th and 17th, Danville saw more than 5.5 inches of rain. Roanoke received nearly 3 inches of rainfall, while Lynchburg saw close to 2 inches. Minor to moderate flooding was reported along the Dan, Roanoke, and New Rivers. By the end of the event, 3 people had died in Virginia due to the impacts of Florence. One was a 53-year-old woman who drowned in the Roanoke River. Hurricane Michael was the strongest storm of the season, reaching Category 5 status just before making landfall near Panama City, Florida. Damaging winds, heavy rainfall, and storm surge as high as 14 feet impacted the Florida Panhandle. A cold front from the west interacted with the remnants of Michael, causing heavy rainfall in southwest and central Virginia. Rainfall amounts of 4 to 8 inches were reported in the region, with amounts of more than 10 inches in areas south of US 460. Major river flooding was reported along the Dan, Roanoke, and New Rivers. Flash flood emergencies were issued in Roanoke and Pittsylvania counties, including the cities of Roanoke and Danville. 5 people in Virginia died as a result of flooding. In total, Hurricane Florence resulted in $24 billion in damage. For Michael, $25 billion. Due to the fatalities and extensive damage caused by these storms, the World Meteorological Organization retired the names Florence and Michael from future storm name list.
When we return, once a hurricane starts spinning up in the Atlantic Basin, teams across the country and here at home start getting ready. We take a look at how the Red Cross is already preparing to send the help.
But first, it is time for another trivia of all the retired Atlantic storm names. Which lettered names were retired the most? C storms, F storms, I storms, or N storms? That answer when we come back. You're watching Safety in the Storm.
Welcome back. So, of all of the retired Atlantic storm names, which letter names were retired the most? C storms, F storms, I storms, or N storms? The answer is I storms.
Well, right now, agencies across the East and Gulf Coasts are gearing up for hurricane season. And that includes here at home, where the Red Cross is stocking up for whatever the season brings. The American Red Cross has been providing disaster relief and help for those in need for over 125 years. So when hurricane season rolls around, the Red Cross goes to the playbook that's been so successful for so many years and gets prepared for any emergencies that may arise.
All of our disaster program managers are reaching out right now to our local officials, to our community partners, making sure our shelter agreements are up to speed, and that we have our trained volunteers that are ready to go if there is a disaster in our area.
But it really is the volunteers that are the heart and soul of the deployment and assistance phase of disaster relief. Once they're trained and approved for deployment, they provide their availability on the Red Cross website, and they're good to go.
It has been a very active spring season for the American Red Cross, really locally and nationally, and our volunteers have been deployed a lot. So right now, we really need to get the message out that we need more volunteers.
There really is no way of telling what this season has in store for us. But the more volunteers, the better. And if you like helping people, this may be right up your alley. And folks, we really want to thank the Red Cross for all the help that they do, of course, as well as God's Pit Crew and other agencies that help out. But if you are preparing for yourself, there are some items that you need to get kind of squared away to help you. And I got a big old backpack here that I stuff all my safety items in, and I always have a little bit of food and a flashlight, and of course you want to make sure you got a lot of water.
Definitely, and especially when it comes to the food, you know, non-perishable foods are one thing to talk about. And I notice you have some of the cans on there, especially look for those cans with the pull tabs on them.
Definitely.
Otherwise you're probably going to need a can opener, so make sure you have that in your emergency kit as well. Another thing though that is important is you want to make sure that you have any prescriptions that you need, any medications that you may need. Make sure they are all good to go, that they're not expired, and you have plenty of them in case an emergency does occur.
You know, a lot of the things that we have, I keep these in my car all the time. One of the things, I'll just hold this up. So this is actually one of those mini emergency ponchos, and that's actually in my glove box all the time. I mean, even just on a normal rainy day when you got a deluge or something and you're wearing your finest suit, grab this up and you're good to go. Behind this, I've got a weather radio here. The key with this one is that it is both battery powered, solar powered. I can actually crank it up, and it'll give me the National Weather Service channels in there as well, so I can tune those in no matter where I am across the area. The thing that I like the most is actually this little device right here. This is actually a battery pack that is not only strong enough to charge up your cell phones and the like, it actually has enough power that you can jumpstart your car with it as well.
Wow.
And these are very affordable. This was actually less than $100, and you can find them a little bit less than that. You can find them costing a little bit more than that. But I carry these things, and there's actually more in my car. I carry these things actually with me all the time.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely some things to keep in mind. Yeah.
Definitely have some of the cooler items.
I was going to say, I like that little thing. I may need to take that for myself.
I got a can of soup, you know.
Well, you know, I was thinking we always need to carry cash with us as well. And I was going to show some cash, but it was spent.
Yeah.
It was spent on those things.
Definitely. So, that's all good items and all things that you're definitely going to need. And just keep them in your car or safe or close at hand for that. But first, once again, before we move forward, it's time for weather trivia. Now, what is the calmest part of the hurricane called? The eye wall, the heart, or the outer bands? The answer when we come back. You're watching Safety in the Storm.
And welcome back. So what is the calmest part of the hurricane eye called? The eye wall, the eye, the heart, the outer bands? The answer is A. I kind of snuck it in there on you. It is the eye.
Yes, the same answer twice. This is good. What does NOAA expect to see for this year's hurricane season? They always come out with their pre-predictions, or their outlook is what it's called. So let's check it out. The agency expects a normal season. What is that, Karen?
Yeah, well, that means that the outlook, this was actually released last week, and experts, they expect anywhere between 12 to 17 named storms. The average is 14 named storms.
Now, they're also expecting 5 to 9 of those storms to become hurricanes. In an average season, there are 7 hurricanes.
Yeah, and NOAA believes that there will be between 1 and 4 major hurricanes. The average is around 3 major hurricanes each year. And oftentimes these things are not expected to be 100% correct. These are basically given to us so that we can get ready for the season. In other words, it's more of a, hey, by the way, the season's coming. This is what we think is going to happen. Don't know if it's actually going to be this. We'll give you a general idea based on climatological issues. But I think the main focus for this release, and then the update in August, I think, is to get you prepared for what's going on.
As they put it, it's not a landfall outlook, but it's just to make sure, like you said, John, that people are prepared.
Yep.
Storms like these don't have to be scary. If you have a plan already made, you can be ahead of the game as this hurricane season starts to form.
And if you want to get those warnings first, you can download the WFXR News app to stay weather aware.
And thank you so much for joining us here on Safety in the Storm. Stay alert and stay safe.